Behind the Brand features the people who are making things happen. Get the insight to grow your biz from experts who've done it. Get behind the brand. Sponsored by Raven Internet Marketing Tools.
Hi, I'm Brian Elliott, and you're watching another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with Amber Naslund. Amber, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Nice to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're on the floor at Blog World here in Los Angeles, talking a lot about new media and sort of where this is all headed in this space. And you had a new book out earlier this year.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's called The Now Revolution. I co-wrote it with Jay Baer, who's also a social media guy in the space. And we wanted to take a little bit of a different tack around social media. There were plenty of books about the tactical side of doing social media marketing, but we didn't think there was enough out there helping businesses actually adapt structurally to what was happening around social. So that's the approach we took.
A lot of people who watch this show, they're entrepreneurs, small business owners, marketing peeps, and they're trying to put the puzzle together. You know, they want answers. What kind of advice would you give them? What kind of tips would you give them about coming up with a social strategy?
Well, what's really interesting is I think because social media is so easy to enter into, you can throw up a Facebook page and get on Twitter and it's really easy, but we don't have a lot of discussion around what happens if that goes right. So it has far-reaching implications inside of an organization. So my actual advice to a lot of businesses is to slow down. And yes, it's important that you do this, but it's actually really important that you consider all of the areas that social could potentially touch. So it's not just marketing and PR, it's customer service, it's product development, and giving yourself the chance to put together a strategy that's horizontal as well as vertical is actually really important.
You talk about Wayfarers as a concept.
Right.
Expound on that a little bit.
I'm a big proponent of the idea that we as new media enthusiasts and evangelists are really the ones who see a future that no one else sees quite yet. So we're sort of embarking on this new era. To me, a wayfarer is somebody that is willing to question the status quo and to do it in an intelligent way that actually helps affect change. And I really do think that we have an incredible opportunity and responsibility right now to be part of the sea change that business is going through.
Why is it so important, though, right now for people that have this kind of attitude?
The landscape individually and on a business level has completely changed. We have sort of new expectations as professionals for what kind of an impact we can have in the world. So being willing to sort of question why we do what we do is really critical to making sure that we can actually take a step on a path that maybe we don't know where it leads, but that it's going to take us somewhere different. I'm sort of fond of saying that if you want to do something new, the path to that is not on the existing map. And businesses are sort of at that crux right now too, where we're not really sure where all of this is going, but we know we have to do something different. And it's my encouragement for people to be willing to sort of question things and take some scary but important steps forward.
In your speech, you talked a lot about ROI and how we maybe need to think differently about how we measure things and how we go about things.
Yeah, the ROI argument in social is one that's getting a lot of traction, right? Because people are desperate to understand the impact that it's having and are we getting anything out of this? And my friend Saul Kaplan wrote a really great post on Harvard Business Review about the whole ROI metric. It's a great measurement for established business practices to see how well they're performing. But if you're doing something new, you kind of have to look at its success a little bit differently. So it's not just about, not that it can't make money out of the gate, but are there other things that it's impacting or ripples that it's making that you can't necessarily shove into a financial equation?
Yeah, but what do you say, when the whoever it is making the decisions really takes the hard line and says, listen, Amber, I can't take a hug to the bank.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Well, we take hugs to the bank all the time in business, actually, because we don't demand necessarily that every effort that we do turns a profit on day one. Not that it shouldn't eventually be part of the overall business plan, but when you're talking about things like innovation or disruptive technologies or really rethinking a new business model, you have to look at success in different terms. So sometimes that might be whether or not you successfully shifted a strategy that it itself could make money in the long run, but I'm sitting in an executive suite saying, do you want to be stagnant or do you want to move forward? And that in and of itself, to me, is a return.
Is it one or the other? Can you have both?
Yes, I think you can have both.
Going forward sometimes means taking risks and sometimes taking a loss, right?
That's right.
Staying stagnant is the safe route.
That's right.
But you think you can have both?
I do think you can have both. I think it's rare. And I think especially around innovation, you sort of have to have an appetite for destruction a little bit. We leave a lot on the cutting room floor when we innovate.
Yeah.
And that's from money to projects that don't work to people sometimes that don't fit the mold that we're going toward. And those are hard choices and hard realities for businesses that they're often afraid to make, because that risk carries with it accountability. If you make a really tough choice, or if you initiate a project that fails, you're responsible for the result. And as humans, we're really uncomfortable with that.
What do you think people are most afraid of? What's the biggest obstacle?
Most people would say failure, and I say it's blame. Most people, when they're looking at taking really calculated risks in their personal lives or in their professional lives, are so afraid of being at fault for what they do. So if they make a choice that affects other people and it's not the right choice, we look to them to blame someone. And blame calls into question all of our deepest fears. Are we worthy? Are we talented enough? Are we qualified to be doing these things?
Sure.
So blame is a scary thing, and I think that's what holds us back.
How do you then fix that? Because if you're on the lower end of the totem pole, certainly it's more difficult to affect change.
Well, I don't think it's more difficult to affect change. I think it's more difficult to affect broad-scale change, maybe, but incremental change makes up the big change. So you have to be willing to settle for sometimes small, tiny shifts toward the right direction. Everybody wants to change the world, but not everybody wants to take the first step to do that. And big, gigantic revolutions are made up of little, tiny moves. So I always encourage people who are young in their careers, if they want to change big things, to start by changing little things.
Okay, good advice. What are you afraid of?
I am honestly afraid of getting bored more than anything in the world. I think I fear stagnation myself. So I'm a single mom. I've got a daughter. And I took some big risks in my personal and professional lives. So I'm always afraid of not being brave enough, that I'm going to play it safe and miss a huge opportunity that comes my way.
If you're a small business owner, you're just getting started, how do you know when to stick it out? When to hang it up, when to give up? I mean,
that's such a hard question. I don't know that there's a hard and fast answer to it either. The cliche answer is to say follow your gut.
Yeah.
And we've all said that at times, but really, I don't know if that's really great structured business advice.
Or if I'm an executive, how long should I give the person who's pitching me this program?
Sure.
How long should I be patient?
Well, it's a good question. I think in general, in my experience, most sort of new initiatives take about a year to figure out whether they've got traction or not. And I guess that's talking a pretty decent size one. Little changes can happen faster than that. But if you're talking like real directional shifts in a business, it takes about a year really to settle in and know whether you're headed in the right direction.
So speaking about brands, if someone's got a new company, new brand, product or service, whatever, how do you go from good to great?
Are you asking me or Jim Collins?
Well, maybe my question is more, how do you differentiate yourself in this very crowded landscape? A lot of voices. Maybe talk specifically to social media.
For me, when it comes to the noise that is out there for all of the businesses vying for attention, it sounds a little bit overly simplistic, but I think the one thing that can really set you apart from somebody else is the people in your company. I think talent and retaining and recruiting and fostering the right talent is one of the biggest and most important investments we can make. And it's not just your people are your best asset, so you give them a bonus at the end of the year. It's truly making people in your company feel like they're part of building something bigger.
So how do you do that?
One of the most short-sighted things that I see a lot is that big ideas live in the top of organizations. And the builders, the people who are sort of amongst the tactical ranks of companies.
The executors.
Yeah, the executors, the people who are really tasked with carrying out the plans that they're handed. They're often sort of tasked with a job, build this, do this thing. and they rarely get to see the results or the fruit of their labors. So involving people in bigger picture thinking and understanding their individual role in that, I think can make whole companies feel like they're moving forward together as opposed to in pieces. Collaboration is a word that we love to give lip service to, and we're not really good at putting in true deep practice, because collaboration isn't just about throwing up a wiki inside your company and letting everybody write articles. It's truly about making people feel invested in the outcome and that they've got a collective reward from the result. Our systems aren't set up to reward collaboration. They're set up to reward individual success. So I think we've got a shift in terms of finding a way to have people share in collective results in a way where they can see not only their individual contribution, but how important it is that everybody get there together. It's very hard to define, and I think that's part of what I mean by this wayfaring thing is figuring out the answer to what is all of this. Sit down and ask somebody what is social media, and you'll get 75 different answers. Same for social business. If I had to encapsulate it in something, it is reducing the friction in individual communication. And I think that has long-reaching implications. You see the things happening in the Middle East and the Arab Spring and some of that kind of thing. Occupy Wall Street and the politics happening there and how that's spreading all over the place. We've removed barriers to communication and information in a way that is completely unprecedented. So now geography and circumstance are not part of that picture anymore, and people can connect with information and other people in an instant, halfway across the world, and it has profound implications on the decisions and choices and actions we take. I think there's no such thing as really being over-prepared. I know a lot of people talk about just do it and go act and execute and stuff like that, but I think there's value in contemplation. I think there's value in asking a lot of questions and understanding the motivation behind what you're doing. But the sister comment to that is that I think I wish I'd been a little braver, because I look at what I was afraid of, and it was usually, could I pay the bills and keep the mortgage? And then you start asking yourself, what's the true worst that can happen? I could go work at Starbucks if I have to. So if you're really passionate about something, I think you need to test your tolerance for doing something that scares the crap out of you, because it's the only way you really make progress.
Excellent. Amber, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me, Brian.
This Behind the Brand episode is brought to you by Raven Internet Marketing Tools, powerful data and tools for online marketers. Get a free trial at raventools.com/behind.